So last week I went to the Roger Waters concert and it was pretty interesting. So I read some reviews. My girlfriend and I went. We actually won tickets on the radio, which is pretty cool. Caller number 10 on WGRR 103.5, Cincinnati radio station. And so we went, and so our seats are pretty good. They were like $200 seats, so it was pretty good. It was in the lower bowl. Anyway, so we read some reviews about the concert, and a lot of it said it was really political. And yeah, I see what they mean. And one thing is, I agree with Roger Waters' stance on a lot of what he said. I mean, my criticism wouldn't be that it was political. I don't think that was the right word. I think it was just kind of dark. It was just a little too much because at times it wasn't really fun. But I agree with it. It was very anti-establishment, anti-system. And I can get down with that, man. I don't know where to look. See, I'm doing this. I'm trying to film these on my phone now, and I don't know where to look. So if I look in the camera, where's the camera? There. Then it's do I look there or do I look in my eyes when I'm filming it? I don't know. So if you see me looking all kind of weird and trying to figure out where to look, that's why I'm trying to figure out how to do this, making these little videos on my phone. I used to do them on my computer, or I'd do them on my handheld, but I've got this little stand, and the microphone doesn't really work, so I'm just using a regular microphone, but I'm using this little stand. Anyway, so, yeah. So, some of the things, it was one of the things that started off was he called all the presidents from Reagan to Biden war criminals. Every single one of them. Reagan, Bush, the other Bush, Clinton, Trump, Biden, war criminals. All of them. Not just, one side of politics or the other side of politics. All the presidents war criminals. I'm down with that. And then he also, because the war is bad and war, it keeps happening whether or not who's president or whether or not which, political party is in control. Oh, hey, I like my shirt. I wore this shirt to it. It's kind of trippy. It's fractals, man. I'm into fractals, man. I got videos on that. You should look into that stuff. Just like fractals, the holographic universe, fractal holographic universe, consciousness, non-local consciousness, panpsychism, Nassim Haramein's theories, the generalized holographic approach. Anyways, it's not about that in this video. Well, not exactly. But so some of the other things, a lot of it I totally agreed with, It was very anti-police brutality. I'm down with that. I don't like the police, right? It was, it was indigenous rights, trans rights, a lot of that kind of stuff, and it had, so certain things that would be classified as like left-wing politics, which is why some people didn't like it, calling Reagan a war criminal. Some of these people really like Ronald Reagan, you know what I mean? And, and they're not always down with some of that stuff on like trans rights, gay rights, and so, fuck the Supreme Court. He said fuck a lot. Like, it was probably at least 100 times. It was fuck this, fuck that. And it was very intense. It really was. As I said, some of it really wasn't like, normally concerts are fun, people are dancing. Other criticism I had of this wasn't Roger's fault, it was the crowd's fault. People sat down the whole time. What the fuck kind of lame shit is this? Who sits down at a concert? You get up and dance, man. Like, you have fun. Now, maybe that's because Rogers didn't put on a purposely incredibly fun show. It was more of a very anti-system, fuck the government kind of show. And look, I'm all about anti-system, fuck the government. But I'm also about fun. Because, one of the things the government does is they try to inhibit our fun. And that's kind of where I was going to go with this. But we'll see how it goes, you know what I'm saying? Because and so a lot of that stuff, I got a little bit of notes here, fuck the patriarchy. Oh yeah, get down with that. Anti-rich, Even though, I mean, Roger might have been the richest one in the room. But that's not what he means. He means like super rich and controlling the system and the capitalism and all that. But the irony is still there if he's like the richest guy in the room, you know what I mean? But he might not have been. I don't know who was there. Way richer than me, that's for sure. And, you know, a lot of the victims of police brutality, very anti-war. Fuck your guns. That was another thing that was a little polarizing on that one, you know. Fuck guns. Some people really like their guns, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, he had all that stuff. So it made me think, you know, so Roger is sometimes classified as left-wing. Now, he doesn't buy into all the sort of left-wing narratives. He wasn't, he kind of knew, he was smart enough to realize that the war criminals were ultimately behind COVID policy, I mean, at the very top. So he wasn't really all about that. He wasn't a super, you know, COVID zealot, you know. There wasn't a vaccine passport at this concert, or else I wouldn't have been able to go. And, you know, so he's not, and then I just saw an interview with him the other day. He doesn't really believe the mainstream narrative on the Ukraine war. Yeah, he calls that out, you know, doesn't just blindly support Ukraine because the media tells him to. You know, so that's a little bit different. And but what I was thinking of was like, what is really different? Because I'm anti-system. Look, I don't identify as right-wing. I'm not a Republican. Hell no. You know, it's like, I don't call myself a conservative. I used to be more a left-wing anti-system kind of person. And so, you know, what? And so this isn't really about, you know, where I'm going to take this. Isn't really about Roger Waters specifically, because I don't know what the whole scope of what Roger Waters thinks. I mean, I could tell you what was at that concert, and it was very anti-system. And it was, they want to rule the world, and who are they? And, well, you know, I don't think he answered that question very well. But, you know, it was basically the people trying to rule the world, the ones in charge, right? You know, and I don't know, the war criminals, you know, they want to rule the world. And so where I want to take this is kind of like, all right, so so I'm down with that. All that fuck the system stuff, like, I'm against police brutality. You know, I support rights for everyone, you know, I'm not against gay rights or trans rights or, you know, I don't like guns. I'm not really pro-gun. I'm also not really pro-gun laws because I don't trust the government to take the guns away. Or, you know, I don't trust governments at all, you know. But I don't like guns, man. I don't think more guns are the solution to gun violence. Like, well, I don't really agree with that. And that's why, you know, there's a lot of things I don't really agree with the right-wing perspective, right? And, you know, and so there wasn't really anything I disagreed with when it came to Roger's whole message of this movement. You know what I'm saying? Like, I agreed with this whole message, this anti-system, anti-government message that he was going for. But he's classified as right-wing, okay? No, sorry. Wow, I fucked all of that. He's sometimes classified as left-wing. Now, he doesn't agree with all the left-wing narratives, but, you know, can be classified that way, and maybe that's also directly dealing with his stance on moved it a little bit. Maybe directly dealing with stance on economic policy. But there's so much more than economic policy that has to deal with all this. And, you know, personally, I think our economic structure, our financial structure is rigged. Whatever you call our economic and financial structure right now, I do not support. I am not a fan of this. I think if we had a system where people worked for the benefit of each other instead of profit, that would be better. So, you know, I don't like to attach the labels on this because a lot of people have confusions on the labels of what communism and socialism are, and there's just as much confusion on what capitalism really is. A lot of people associate capitalism with the free market, but our market right now isn't totally free. It's a rigged system, okay? And I want to get rid of this rigged system. But, you know, economic policy isn't really my expertise, you know. Philosophy is. And that's a huge part of it is, so I'm not, I'm going to separate a little bit from, I'm not going to go off with specifically with Roger Waters. I'm going to adjust it again because I like to get the whole background in with no white spaces, man. Should I have angled it down a little more? What? That way you can see more of my shirt and I can back up and go, whoa, floating in fractals, yeah. Yeah, so what are we talking about now? Philosophy, that's usually where I go with this, yeah. So, I wanted to make this because it really got me thinking, like, I'm up for the anti-system message. Because a lot of people are right-wing. They group in right-wing conspiracies with right-wing, and Trump and Q really helps them over up there. And, but, most conspiracy theorists, like me, wouldn't say they're right-wing, because we don't associate with a lot of that. And a lot of right-wing people, it was 11:11 on the time, how about that? I saw it, yeah. Most right-wing people wouldn't really necessarily consider themselves conspiracy theorists, certainly not to the extent I am, because there's a huge point of differentiation here. And there is a big overlap when it comes to the whole Great Reset. And that's kind of part of this too, where I was going with this is, they want to rule the world. Who are they? Well, it's the people at the top who are ultimately, they want more control of the world. They want to further rule the world. Because the people who are trying to really take more power and control of the world already have it to an extent, and that's how they're able to get more, right? And so, I'd say part of the difference is between my perspective and not necessarily Rogers, but the kind of perspective at that, kind of the super anti-system far left. We agree on a lot. I'm not a capitalist. I don't support our financial and economic system by no means, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so what do we, what's the difference here? And, well, one would be, kind of the whole Great Reset, New World Order thing. And so I find that, that's kind of grouped in with a right-wing view, right? And I'm been a New World Order conspiracy theorist for a while. I found out about this stuff years ago, well before COVID, and then, before anybody was talking about and grouping that in with Great Reset, which I would find to be basically the same kind of thing. And it all relates to, is the camera even straight? Am I? Yeah. And so it all really, we'll put eye on the camera, am I straight or am I crooked? Okay, so it all relates to, what is this New World Order? And it's people further trying to take over the world. It's them trying to rule the world. And a lot of it has to do with using these certain organizations and these worldwide entities, these worldwide organizations to which they're amassing power through, to which then they can supersede the laws and governing structures of countries to then implement their world policy and implement and kind of take over the world that way, right? And some of these organizations that do this are the they're using like the United Nations, these, right? It's like this world organization, all these big world organizations, the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum, okay? And so they're using these things to try to take that kind of power and control over that by having these world entities impose ways, supersede government structures of individual countries to kind of implement their world policy. The New World Order conspiracy theory is just vaguely this idea that there are certain networks of power trying to implement and control world policy, which essentially you could call like a one world government, right? And, on the surface, right, if you say like, well, we need something to unite the world and it's like the concept, like, is government bad? Well, as a concept, a centralized power governing force to be able to stop people from harming each other, which is part of the basic idea people think of a government. It's like, okay, well, I'm not saying that's necessarily bad, some sort of rules and regulations. Like, we need traffic rules and regulations. If we didn't have stoplights and stop signs and things for intersections, people would be hitting each other. It's like, we need a centralized rule and organized structure here to kind of have a means of society to operate in an efficient manner. Right? I get it. Like, it's like, I want no government ever. Government's always bad. But it's the governments on this planet that have been corrupted, you see? It's not that just governments are bad, as in a concept. As in the concept of government is bad. No, it's that these governments are corrupted and don't serve fully the benefit of the people, but serve some other motive, right? And so a lot of people see this to an extent, but, what does it all trace back to? So now we could say, that's where I was going with this, was, the New World Order Great Reset is, not, globalism is essentially the same thing, right? And it's all about these certain networks trying to amass greater power and control over the world through these entities. And there's also, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, these other kind of entities that meet and try to organize world structure and try to take and have created these entities of, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, United Nations, and they're using those as their method of superseding sovereign nations to kind of implement their world policy. And, COVID was a big part of this, and they're also using climate change agenda, climate change agenda as another part of this. And, look, I fully agree. We need to take care of the planet. We need to change our way of being with nature. We need to change our relationship with the earth. We need to stop pollution. I'm totally down for this, man. Like, we need to really overhaul our system in a way to live in harmony with nature. I get it, yeah. The way we've been doing these things has been terrible. He's destroying rainforests, destroying nature, and building factories for profit that just pollute the air and pollute the environment. That's not a good thing. I don't support any of this. But, the whole climate change agenda isn't really about a philosophical shift so we can, be in harmony with nature. It's more about this agenda to amass more world power and control for these certain networks. That's my take on it, at least, right? And so I think that's a big part of where the difference between kind of my view, which I don't consider right wing, but certain the Great Reset kind of conspiracy gets grouped in with a right wing conspiracy, you know what I mean? But and the New World Order and all that, and so it kind of the left, the people who identify as left don't seem to. They say that there's they say similar things, like Rogers, like they want to rule the world. And it's like, that's not really different from what I'm saying. And these people, they who want to rule the world from what I'm saying, are these billionaires and these, like, they're not different people, you know what I mean, right? They're not, it's these... Like, who do you think is part of this cabal, this deep state? It's not a bunch of, like, random poor people, it's these same corrupted, rich, billionaire, greedy motherfuckers, like, right? Like, that's who they are, right? I think we're not really talking about different people here. That's why I think, it's kind of a critical distinction to make. It's like, so what do you... Right, so that was kind of where I'm going with this, is in this one regard. Now, there's a whole big focus on the philosophy and of spirituality and kind of ancient history, of how, the ancient history isn't what we're told at all, and how there's plenty of evidence that it's much old, that, in ancient past, it goes back much farther and was much more advanced than the mainstream understanding thinks of it today. Okay, and that, well, they say they were visited by gods or beings from the sky, and how that all ties into all this. And really, the whole conspiracy is more about keeping us on these lower consciousness, lower vibrational energy states. And well, that's a key difference too, but I don't think I'm going to get into all that because it's already a long video, and I got plenty of videos on that. Okay, so I might do a different video today even. I'll be still wearing this cool shirt where I talk about all that. But so, it's to go from there and say what's really the difference between my perspective and kind of the message Roger Waters was giving. Because, as I've been saying, is I agree. In case you didn't know, I don't know if I mentioned this. If you don't know anything about Roger Waters, he was in Pink Floyd, man. So he played a lot of Pink Floyd songs. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, so it was really fun. They played a lot. He opened up with Comfortably Numb. Did another Brick in the Wall, parts 2 and 3. He did Shine On You Crazy Diamond, Brain Damage, a lot of real good ones. The ones my favorite Pink Floyd song is Hey You. He didn't play that one, but I'm okay with that. I was really looking forward to another Brick in the Wall, singing along like, we don't need no education. We don't need no thought control. I think that part was really cool, and so I was really looking forward to that. So that was fun, they played that. Although the imagery at that point was also like, fuck the system. It was like dark, man. It wasn't, and I get that, the whole point of that whole thing was, The Wall was a dark movie, and it's, I get it, like, I'm with it. Like, I understand the premise. I do. But, it's like, I'm very anti-system too, man. And it's just, so what, And I guess that's where I was really want to go with this, without getting into the philosophy, spirituality aspect of it, which is crucial, because the people trying to the people trying to control the world, control the schools, control the education, control the media narratives. They control your world views. So this is critical to get. So, it's like, in the ancient past, they're older and more advanced, and we have plenty of evidence from their philosophies. Like, you look into Hermeticism, it's really good philosophy. All is mind, that's the first Hermetic principle. That's the biggest point to get. There isn't just a physical reality existing in and of itself, fundamentally devoid of consciousness, to which consciousness either just arises as an epiphenomenon of the brain with no causal efficacy, no free will, which is kind of the mainstream paradigm, or kind of a unquestioned dualism that a lot of people have, where they think consciousness does arise in the brain, but there is free will, which doesn't really make any sense if you look into a lot of philosophy. Or then there's also kind of a substance dualism, a Cartesian dualism, which is kind of more the mainstream paradigms of modern religion, which think that, God created the universe like a machine, and that our souls are separate from a material existence. A dualism. There's fundamentally a material existence, which in itself is non-conscious, and then consciousness is something separate. My view is that consciousness is fundamental and ubiquitous through information exchange in a fractal and holographic network. So it's all is mind is essentially the premise. Now, it's a lot to get into to really fully explain the philosophy, but I wasn't really prepared, I wasn't going to do that in this video because I wanted to focus somewhere else. But I got all kinds of videos on that. I wrote papers on this, and I'm writing a book on that. The philosophy is my area of expertise, and it's really a critical point to get here. Okay. So anyways, that was kind of where I was going. Is what is the difference between that kind of anti-system grouped in with a leftist mentality, which generally views it all as greedy, rich, capitalism. That's a lot of people say, like, there's no deep state shadowy cabal, it's just capitalism. It's like, well, first of all, how do they hold capitalism into place? Like, if it's just the capitalists. Well, who are the capitalists? People behind the scenes operating to hold the capitalism in place at the detriment of the masses and to the benefit of themselves? is that really that much different than a cabal who's, you know what I mean? I get, it's tying it back to the human trafficking networks and tying it in to the human trafficking and the practice of sacrifice to gods and demons, which is where, the philosophy and spirituality has to come in. You have to really get that, because otherwise, you're like, no, they made all that stuff up. That's not real. There's just a material universe. Which, if that were true, you don't have free will, and you don't even have any explanation for how consciousness came about to begin with. So, you really should look into the philosophy if you want to know what you're talking about here. But, right? And so that's kind of the big part of it. And so it's also where I was really going at this. It's like, okay, so the New World Order Great Reset agenda is also they want to rule the world. Why aren't people, why would somebody who agrees with Roger Rogers' message not get that? That's what I don't really understand. Okay, so it's not, so all right, there are these entities like the United Nations, World Health Organization, and World Economic Forum. They obviously exist. Now, things like the Trilateral Commission and Bilderberg Group, well, I would say I think undeniably exist. I'm not sure many people really deny their existence. They just deny that when they meet in secret that they're plotting bad things. Which is similar to, no one really denies the existence of the United Nations, World Economic Forum, and World Health Organization. It's just that they trust that these world entities are operating in their benefit, I guess? I don't know. It's like, do you think these world entities are working in a way opposing the people who want to try to take over and rule the world, try to further rule the world? That's what I don't get. It's like, okay, so, if you're super anti-system, kind of like the Roger Waters message at this concert, but you're not a New World Order Great Reset conspiracy theorist, why? That's what I don't get. Do you think these world organizations, which are clearly operating in a way, they say they want to, it's really funny, you can read it, it's like, oh, well, there's no New World Order conspiracy theory. There's no one world government plot. They're just trying to implement strategies to help address global challenges. And it's like, so they want to create networks which have worldwide ruling authority to address global challenges. Now, it's the global challenges that they created in the first place. Okay, like these economic systems that are all rigged, the destruction of the environment, which is a product of our materialistic philosophy and economic systems as well, And so it's like, it's because, the brainwashing and the indoctrination of the philosophy and worldview is the key part you need to get, and that's why I recommend a lot of my other videos. But, and so it's, how can you sit there and deny that, if you're anti-system and think there's certain people that want to take over and rule the world, corruptly, that the United Nations, World Health Organization, World Economic Forum aren't a part of that? Do you think they're opposing that? I don't really get it, right? What are you really saying? Because that's the whole point here, is these worldwide entities are trying to amass more power for themselves to implement global strategies, is what they say. And, address global challenges is a direct quote. I don't know if they say global strategies, but that's kind of their wording. It's kind of like, well, there's no New World Order conspiracy. We're just trying to reorganize the world under our control. It's like, that's what the New World Order conspiracy is. You're trying to reorganize the world under your control. So, you'd have to trust them. Do you trust the World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, United Nations? Right? Do you trust that these billionaires and billion-dollar companies who invest in these are actually doing things for your benefit? They control the schools, they control the media, and they make you think that, which is why you really need to look into the philosophy and try to understand the philosophy of your view and realize they're fucking lying to you about your entire worldview. That critical, okay? Well, that's really the point I meant, because I was out there, Roger Waters concert, I'm thinking, super anti-system, and why is he not a right-wing conspiracy theorist? Why is he not at least grouped in with right-wing conspiracy theories when even though I don't identify as right-wing, my views are sometimes Great Reset, New World Order, grouped in with right-wing conspiracies. And it's like, so what's the difference? And I guess it's just not saying that those entities are them who are trying to rule the world. But in what way are they not? That's what I'm saying. In what way are these entities, which are very clearly on the surface telling you they want to address global challenges and amass greater power network so that they can implement their strategies to address these challenges, not the same people trying to rule the world? Are they opposing the people trying to rule the world? I mean, it's right there. Like, that's what I don't really get. And so, I mean, I would really look into this. If you think there's them trying to take over the world, consider that it's the people and the networks that are openly out there saying they want to amass greater power to address global challenges. Now, the question is, do you trust them? And, why would you trust them? That's what I don't get. Maybe you say, like, oh, no, they clearly do say these things. But we can trust that they're not doing this for, they're doing this for our benefit. Well, then who do you think's doing this not for our benefit? Who are the people trying to rule the world not for our benefit, if that's what you think? If it's not the entities accused of the Great Reset New World Order agenda, including the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, United Nations, and other things like the Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, and all that. Right? You talk about capitalists. These are the biggest fucking capitalists there are. Rockefeller started the World Health Organization. I believe he's also tied into, look at the people who go to the Trilateral Commission and Bilderberg Group. They are the richest motherfuckers in the world. Why would you trust them? Look into this stuff. That's what I'm saying. It's like, what? Where is the super anti-system left and the super anti-system right, label disagreeing on? I think it's just the super anti-system left doesn't really get it when they see all these world networks trying to amass world power that they're the bad guys. Yeah, hello? And that's really the point I was trying to make with this video. But remember, I highly, highly recommend you look into the philosophy and try to take seriously the videos and the papers and the books, eventually, will write about this philosophy, because if you don't even try to get that, you're just going to be stuck in the indoctrination that you were given in the school system. And how do you think that's a way to address this? No wonder you don't really get what's going on. You never questioned the whole worldview that you were indoctrinated with in the school system. A lot of people think, well, I reject religion. Religion's the biggest form of indoctrination. Yeah, it is. I think religion was a huge part of indoctrination, and it's a corruption of the spiritual. Because there is something really spiritual, though. Because it's not, one way you can find spiritual is non-material. And I don't think the universe is material at all. And so, it's all a product of the mind. All is mind. And so different networks, not all your mind. It's all just the universe itself is ultimately a fractal holographic geometry through which different nodes in it have different levels and layers of consciousness and create a different reality. It's kind of like, look into like non-direct realism, right? So direct realism would be the world exists, our reality exists exactly how we perceive it, okay? And that's kind of foolish, because it's even called naive realism at times, because then it's like, well, think about like color. It's like, if the world existed directly as we perceive it, then all humans and animals would see it the same way. And no one really thinks that. So it can't really exist directly how we perceive it, So indirect realism would be that the world exists in itself as something, and then we create a representation in our minds of the world. It's like color exists at certain wavelengths of light, and we create a representation in our mind of that world. And, the mainstream view is like epiphenomenalism, which means the representation in our mind has no causal efficacy in how the world exists in itself. But that's the part I disagree with, because it's all a feedback loop network in which our actual perceptions and creation of reality, the representation, feeds back and influences that reality itself. And that reality itself is ultimately a fractal geometric array, to which in itself is beyond any one particular spatial temporal perception, and it works in a non-linear way. And so the causation is both past to future and future to past. And that's how like free will can work, and it's a much more complicated picture, a dynamic causation view as opposed to a linear causation view. And this whole geometric array in itself is the mind, and it doesn't exist in itself fundamentally devoid of mind, and that, we create our, it's like Kant and Schopenhauer. I'm referencing the book of Schopenhauer I have over there, but it's called The World as Will and Representation. And so the indirect realism premise is there's something physical about the world, but we create a representation of certain senses in our minds. But it's something, this world doesn't exist in itself as something like material, physical, in the sense of like just some thing devoid of mental properties. It in itself is a living mental structure. I wasn't gonna get into all this in this video, and but that's where you gotta look into, and so I should prepare myself to go deeper into that, because that's a really important aspect of all this, and that's where that's what I really want to get at, is where is the disagreement between the far left anti-system and the far labeled right anti-system, and a lot of it has to do with who's actually corrupting the power, and whether or not it is this Great Reset New World Order. And then also the spirituality and the ancient history and all that was pretty key too. So that's what I wanted to get at in this video. Toodles!